British volunteers killed on the front line in Ukraine. Andrew Bagshaw and Christopher Parry died whilst attempting a humanitarian evacuation from eastern Ukraine. The news comes as Western nations step up efforts to supply Ukraine with tanks. We'll be live with John Ray in Kyiv, also in News at 10 tonight.
You're under arrest for rape and murder of a female at Cranbrook Road. Okay.
Impossible to say if the public is safe. The shocking admission by the Chief Inspector of Probation as he admits failings that led to the death of Zara Alina.
Zara's life was taken and probation have blood on their hands.
Apprehended, a man is arrested after another mass shooting in America, the 40th mass shooting so far this year. And
you know what? It's my life.
A surprise Oscar nomination for Britain's Andrea Risborough, buoyed by the support of a sisterhood of Hollywood stars.
This is ITV News at 10 with Rageh Omar.
Good evening. The families of two British men who went missing in Ukraine earlier this month have confirmed within the last few hours that they have been killed. It seems the car carrying Andrew Bagshaw, who was 47, and 28-year-old Christopher Parry was hit by an artillery shell in the eastern Donetsk region. Family members say the pair had been trying to rescue an elderly woman after travelling to the area to take part in efforts to bring people out of the war zone and to safety. In a statement released through the Foreign Office, Mr. Parry's family said his selfless determination in helping people in Ukraine had made them extremely proud.
I can push a pedal of a car, so I thought I could help, so I quit my job and off I came.
This was Chris Parry, just days before his last fateful mission to rescue civilians from the front line. A young man, dedicated and determined to the end. He put himself into harm's way, into the path of advancing Russian forces in the eastern town of Soledar. He was last seen heading here into a war that has claimed so many lives, his own and that of a friend and colleague now added to a dreadful toll. He was working with Andrew Bagshaw, another British volunteer. The two men were killed alongside each other, their car hit by an artillery shell. Dr. Bagshaw's family said tonight, Andrew selflessly took many personal risks and saved many lives. We intend that his death shall not be in vain. Chris Parry's family said of their son, his selfless determination in helping the old, the young and disadvantaged has made us and his larger family extremely proud. We never imagined we would be saying goodbye to Chris when he had such a full life ahead of him.
What's your job here, basically?
So I'm an evacuation driver. I receive requests from family members who've asked us to go and collect their relatives.
3 days before his disappearance, Chris was interviewed by a Belgian journalist.
I thought Chris was also very humble because I didn't know him in the first place, but I discovered that he saved hundreds of lives only after that. So he was definitely very humble and brave and inspiring person.
He kept a video diary of his time in Ukraine and of some of the many lives he helped rescue. He said he was drawn to the country and its people in their darkest hour. Tonight, there are two more families in mourning.
Well, the deaths of Andrew Bagshaw and Christopher Parry are a tragedy as the war in Ukraine enters its 11th month with no end in sight. But we may be on the brink of a development that could prove a tipping point. John is in Kyiv for us tonight. John, we've been reporting, I suppose, for days now, that the ongoing row over whether Leopard tanks will be supplied to Ukrainian forces is going to happen. What's the latest?
That's right, Rageh. Well, you know, in war, sometimes pivotal events take place on the battlefield. Sometimes pivotal events take place far from the front line. And this feels like such a moment, because after days and days of mounting pressure, it seems all but certain that tonight the Germans are on the brink of agreeing to supply those Leopard 2 battle tanks, perhaps 14 in all. Or as one senior German parliamentarian put it tonight, I think tomorrow will be a good day for Ukraine. The Germans have already given permission to their NATO allies to train Ukrainian crew on the tanks. That will make it easier for Poland and others to go ahead with their promises to supply the tanks. What is more surprising, Rageh, are reports coming out of the US tonight that in a big U-turn, they may also supply their number one tank, the Abrams. Now, last week, the US were insisting that tank isn't suitable for Ukraine. But what if the Americans are doing that? It would explain the political cover that Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, now has to make this move, which he was very reluctant to do. As far as the Ukrainians are concerned, of course, all this means is one really big thing. They will have the weapons they believe can punch a hole through the advancing Russian lines.
Especially as spring comes. John, thank you very much indeed. Now, there was a startling admission tonight from England's Chief Inspector of Probation that it is impossible to say the public is safe from criminals on probation. 2 cases in the past week, both involving murders of horrifying violence, have laid bare deeply disturbing failings, in the probation service. Today saw the publication of a damning report into how sexual predator Jordan McSweeney was able to flout his probation order before dragging Zara Alina off the street and battering her to death in a driveway. Last week, the probation service was found to have failed at every stage in the case of Kilmarsh murderer Damien Bendell.
Zara's life was taken and probation have blood on their hands.
You're under arrest for rape and murder.
I am profoundly sorry for these failings.
Have you armed yourself?
Yeah. So many people's lives are wrecked just because someone could do their job properly.
It's hard to say what is more harrowing, the grief of families who feel robbed of their loved ones, or the admission that the system designed to keep us safe is no longer working.
This wasn't just a man who happened to kill Zara because he's a monster. This monster was given a license to walk free. The stake is lives. Zara's life was taken and probation have blood on their hands.
Zara Alina knew women were being let down. She'd passed her solicitor's exams, but the system she dreamt of changing failed her before she could begin. Instead, her life was ended by this man, Jordan McSweeney, a dangerous reoffender just out of prison and incorrectly assessed as not being high risk.
You do not have to say anything.
CCTV footage taken close to Alina's home in East London shows McSweeney stalking a number of women that night. The 35-year-old didn't stand a chance.
Zara Alina should have felt free to walk home late at night. It was Jordan McSweeney who should never have been alone on this street. He had 28 past convictions for 69 separate offences, including attacking members of public while on bail and a history of violence against women.
The probation watchdog found a litany of failings. Jordan McSweeney should clearly have been judged a high risk rather than a medium risk offender. The probation service had no address for him, and he wasn't electronically tagged nor arrested, as he should have been when he didn't turn up to a probation appointment. A second missed appointment should have seen him immediately recalled to prison, but it took 4 more days to get the paperwork signed. 2 days later, Zara was murdered.
Is the probation service fit for purpose?
I have serious questions about whether the probation service's systems for assessing and managing risk are fit for purpose. We're repeatedly making recommendations about weaknesses.
No wonder he sounds frustrated. It's barely been a week since he uncovered serious probation failings, which left Damien Bendell free to kill his partner Terry, her 2 children and one of their friends.
So many people's lives are wrecked just because someone could do their job properly. Sorry is not good enough. This can't keep happening. It just can't.
But for Zara's family, another apology came from the government anyway.
I am profoundly sorry for these failings, and the Deputy Prime Minister and I are seeking opportunities to make apologies in person. It is incumbent on us now to do everything we can to ensure they do not and cannot happen ever again.
The truth is, it's just failing after failing, isn't it?
I am starting to lose patience. It's vital that this time round the lessons are learnt from this awful case.
They will need to be to stop others like McSweeney.
I don't believe that he was going to kill somebody and that Zara just happened to be the unlucky one. I don't believe that. I don't accept that. I think that's a really good way of walking away and allowing yourself as ministers to sleep easy. We can't sleep easy.
And they won't rest, they say, until Zara's legacy is the change she dreamt of playing a part in.
Rachel, really powerful testimonies there in your piece. The question facing everyone from Dominic Raab, the Justice Secretary, right the way down, is just how do you put the probation service right and fit for purpose?
Yeah, and I think it's worth saying that it would certainly be difficult to do it more wrong than has happened over the past 2 decades. You may remember there was a botched privatisation attempt by the government. Now, senior probation officers at the time said that just wouldn't work, separating it off from the rest of the justice system. And indeed, just over a couple of years ago, it had to be reversed. But by that time, there had been an absolute exodus of some of the most senior probation officers in the service. And speaking to people who work within the probation service today, the picture they paint is grim. They talk about there being too big caseloads, too little in the way of supervision. And that makes things very difficult. I've been told about new starters who join and after a month leave because they are simply so stressed out by the responsibilities and the lack of support. Look, it isn't easy to rehabilitate and supervise offenders. This isn't the most glamorous part of the justice service. It takes an awful lot of experience to be able to join up the dots, to look at past behavioural patterns. And unless the government can work out how to have a service that retains its best staff, we're going to see more of this type of dreadful cases.
Thank you very much indeed for that piece. Thank you, Rachel. Questions of financial integrity still hang over the government of Rishi Sunak tonight. 2 key figures close to him haunt the Prime Minister. He's under pressure regarding the tax affairs of the current Tory party chairman and former Chancellor Nadeem Zahawi. And now there's the BBC chairman Richard Sharp, who's to be questioned by MPs about whether he helped Boris Johnson secure an £800,000 loan. Mr. Sharp denies any wrongdoing.
2 chairmen, 2 high-profile jobs, adding up to one big headache for Rishi Sunak. Nadeem Zahawi and Richard Sharp are facing very different allegations, but they're both causing problems for a Prime Minister publicly committed to accountability.
You're going to resign, Mr. Zahawi?
Mr. Zahawi is clinging on to his job as Tory chair while the independent ethics advisor looks into his tax affairs. Today, a ministerial colleague appeared to acknowledge the Prime Minister had not known everything when he appointed him.
Well, there were some, I think, new facts that came out over the weekend, some of which were put into the public domain voluntarily by Nadeem Zahawi himself. And responding to those new facts, the Prime Minister, within, I think, 24 or 48 hours, launched this independent inquiry by the independent advisor on ethics and integrity to make sure all of the facts come out.
The new information relates to the fine Mr. Zahawi had to pay to HMRC as part of a multi-million-pound settlement of unpaid tax while he was Chancellor. Even some Tories feel he now needs to step down.
We need transparency and we need to know who knew what and when. I think for Nadeem's sake, he should step aside whilst the inquiry is going on. That will mean that it has an impetus, that it's done quickly. And I think that would be helpful to move the story on from his perspective.
The head of the Committee on Standards in Public Life believes an investigation is the right step.
I've been encouraged that in this case, the Prime Minister has asked the independent advisor on ministerial interests to investigate, because I think we need to be confident that the facts are known, that the facts are being made public, and that then the right judgments can be made.
Funnily enough, Boris Johnson is the common denominator in both rows.
G'day.
He recommended Richard Sharp for the job of BBC chair, even though Mr. Sharp had a hand in helping him secure a loan. Today, Mr. Sharp insisted he wouldn't step down while an investigation looks into his appointment.
I'm confident that he will determine that I was appointed on merit. That's obviously for him to conduct that investigation and process. It was a highly rigorous process, I can tell you, being part of it.
MPs will also question Mr Sharp in early February. The situation regarding both issues uncomfortable for a Prime Minister trying to focus attention on his agenda, but still being haunted by the ghosts of a past one. Romilly Weeks, News at 10.
After the second mass shooting in California in a matter of 2 days, traumatized and exhausted Americans are again tonight calling for gun reform. This time, 7 people were shot dead by a 66-year-old man, to add to the 11 people massacred by another elderly man on Saturday night. 2023 is little more than 3 weeks old, but already the statistics feel barely believable. 40 mass shootings have taken place since the start of this very new year.
The dramatic moment of the arrest was captured by camera crews covering the massacre aftermath. This was the second mass shooting in California in 48 hours. The suspect this time was Zhao Shunli, a 66-year-old Asian American. This attack happened in the coastal agricultural community of Half Moon Bay, 30 miles south of San Francisco. The 7 victims found over 2 locations.
There are simply too many guns in this country, and there has to be a change. This is not an acceptable way for modern society to live and conduct its affairs.
This latest shooting came just 2 days after the dance hall massacre in Monterey Park, east of Los Angeles, in which 11 people died on Saturday night. Video has emerged of the gunman, the one wearing the hat, being disarmed by a courageous member of staff after the killing spree. It has all left top officials in California outraged by the broken politics of gun reform.
And by doing not a damn thing about gun safety, not a damn thing for decades. It's not the right time, not the right time, not the right time. Rinse, repeat, not the right time. Rinse, repeat. Sandy Hook, not the right time. Rinse, repeat. Uvalde. Remember Uvalde? You remember it? What's unique is these large capacity magazine clips that will take down every single one of you in a matter of seconds. These just weapons of pure mass destruction. And the fact that that is not being addressed in this country is comical. It's disgraceful.
His fury is partly fueled by the fact that California has some of the strictest gun laws in America. But as experts point out, there is a fatal weakness in measures imposed by individual states.
In a country that is united by geography, where you can drive from one state to the next, you are in peril to the state with the weakest gun laws. In California's situation, that's Nevada. We need to fix that, and it requires federal action.
President Biden did sign into law a modest bill that tries to keep weapons out of the hands of those deemed dangerous. But with the House of Representatives now in Republican hands, tightening gun laws further is politically inconceivable. Victims of the first massacre are now being identified, mainly elderly Asian Americans who were dancing to celebrate the Lunar New Year. It remains unclear if the second attack was in some way a copycat of the first. It is certainly bizarre both were carried out by elderly Asian Americans with motives that are still entirely unknown. Robert Moore, News at 10, Washington.
A major change is taking place on the high streets up and down the country. You may have noticed that shops, small and businesses, pillars of their local communities, are fast disappearing. The brutal truth is, and it's borne out by the latest statistics today, that more and more of them are at risk of going to the wall.
They've been serving up fish and chips in Chatteris near Peterborough for 35 years. This business passed from father to sons. It's ridden out past recessions, but is up against it now. The cost of cooking oil and fish has surged. Customers are belt tightening. Government support is receding.
Things have become so tight that I've had to increase my prices 3 times in the last 12 months, and it's still not enough. I'm now charging £10 for a portion of fish and chips. And really, it could be 14 and I would still be struggling.
According to the latest survey by the insolvency firm Begbie's Traynor, more than 2,500 companies were in critical financial distress and on the verge of going bust in the last 3 months of last year, an increase of 36% on the same period the year before. Small businesses were the most exposed, with high inflation, rising interest rates and COVID debt repayments cited as the main difficulty.
All companies across all sectors are struggling at the moment, so nobody is really immune. What we are seeing, though, is those businesses that are affected most by people curtailing their discretionary spending, so retail, hospitality, leisure, I think they are very much going to be at the front end of this.
You've seen economic cycles ebb and flow. How does it feel to you? Does it feel like the UK's in a recession currently?
I think it very much feels like the UK is in a practical recession in terms of what's happening on the ground.
This company's been brewing craft beer in Manchester for the last 8 years. It lost markets abroad to Brexit, domestic sales to the pandemic, and when lockdown lifted, the price of hops, grain, carbon dioxide and energy took off. The strain is showing.
I'm almost at the end of what I think I can reasonably do. I'm almost at the end of what I think is responsible with my health. I'm suffering health issues as a result of the stress. My mental health is absolutely on the floor, and I'm not alone.
Back in Chatteris, and they've given themselves 6 months to turn their business around. Tax payments have been delayed, but unless something changes for the better, this shop will have to close for good. Joel Hills, News at 10.
Well, it hasn't been a vintage year for British actors in this year's Oscar nominations. Only 2 got the nod for the major prizes. Bill Nighy is one, and Andrea Riseborough is up for Best Actress, with her nomination coming after some of Hollywood's biggest stars queued up to praise her performance in the film To Leslie.
Now, you may only see a pile of receipts, but I see a story.
It's the one they all want. Whether you're an acting newbie or an industry veteran, winning an Oscar is at the top of the movie star bucket list. And Everything, Everywhere, All at Once is in with the best chance of making dreams a reality. Its cast and crew leading the way with 11 Academy Award nominations.
We're still the best of friends.
No, you're not.
Who says we're not?
Tied for second, both with 9, you've got the dark dramatic comedy The Banshees of Inisherin, featuring Colin Farrell and Brendan Gleeson. And All Quiet on the Western Front, a German-language film set around the end of World War I. It's up for Best Picture, as well as Best Adapted Screenplay. Its writer, former Scottish triathlete Leslie Patterson, says the Oscars really are the pinnacle of success.
I was so nervous. It's what everything is driving towards. I think forever that's what your film has the brush of, right? You know, how many Oscar nominations or Oscars or this or that. It's such a big deal.
It's been a labour of love for Leslie. She's had the rights to adapt the original book for nearly 2 decades, but struggled to get things off the ground.
We had a lot of no's, a lot of setbacks, because World War I was certainly not a war that wanted to be covered in the cinema 16 years ago. Trying to raise finance for essentially a German film was incredibly difficult.
What I wanted was to be a gentleman.
There were a handful of other British nominees. Bill Nighy picked up his first Best Actor nod for his role as a terminally ill civil servant in Living.
And now the 5 nominees for performance by an actress in a leading role.
The biggest shock of the day was Andrea Riseborough's nomination for Best Actress in To Leslie, a relatively unknown film that only made £21,000 at the box office, but won over vocal supporters in Hollywood.
Not only in this room, but, you know, Andrea Riseborough and
Cate Blanchett gave her a shout-out at the Critics' Choice Awards, and Gwyneth Paltrow held one of many special screenings of the film, helping give it a late Oscar nomination push.
Just want to manage expectations.
There was room for the big-budget blockbusters too. Top Gun Maverick and Avatar: The Way of Water, both nominated for Best Picture. Now it's time for the nominees to get their clothes pressed and perhaps start writing a speech. Rishi Davda, News at 10.
Now, cup football and unlikely fairy tales go hand in hand, don't they? And the Scottish Cup has served up a pretty good example of classic giant-killing magic. The people of the small Ayrshire town of Darvel, population just 4,000, have spent the day in disbelieving celebration after their team knocked out Aberdeen.
The Ayrshire town of Darvel, population not quite 4,000. Known for being the birthplace of the man who discovered penicillin, and now for the biggest shock in Scottish Cup history. Last night, Premiership professionals Aberdeen, winners of 2 European trophies, came to town and were expected to win easily. But they were humbled by a junior club of part-timers. Darvel's goal scorer Jordan Kilpatrick, a plumber by day. No team from Scotland's 6th tier had ever beaten a top-flight team before. And they had to hang on, relying on a school teacher in goals. This hometown of Sir Alexander Fleming defeated the former club of Sir Alex Ferguson, and history was made. Now the morning after the night before, Darvel's manager went to thank his team's mascots, ball boys and ball girls.
We couldn't have done it without you, sir. Yeah, we're going to put Falkirk out the next round at the plan.
How did you feel being there, watching history?
Yeah, I was on my dad's shoulders.
You were on your dad's shoulders?
Yeah.
Was your dad jumping up and down?
Yeah.
You got your hair dyed for the match last night?
Yes.
So what, do you want to play for Darvel when you grow up?
Yeah. I feel pretty special about these boots now.
You hope you get signed for Darvel, not Rangers or Celtic or Man City or Arsenal?
No, none of them.
Darvel Football Club is the only one for you?
Yep.
What do you want to say to Mick Kennedy?
You were brilliant as a manager. Brilliant team talk as well.
That team talk.
And this is your town, this is your home, this is your battleground.
Unusually, Mick Kennedy allowed his rousing pre-match speech to be recorded. You feel it right there, I'm ready to go and play for you. What's going through your mind when you're delivering a team talk like that?
I suppose I believed that our biggest strength was our togetherness.
This shouldn't have happened though. I mean, Aberdeen are a professional team, the top tier of Scottish football. You're training your players 2 nights a week.
But that's the romance of the cup. That's one of the romances of football in this country. That's why we love it so much.
And all down to your team talk.
A small part.
This victory is being called the Marvel in Darvel. And in true Marvel style, we saw ordinary men become heroes. Peter Smith, News at 10, Darvel in Ayrshire.
Great story. Finally, move over Rover tonight because apparently it's pigs, not dogs, that should be regarded as man's best friend. Researchers say porkers are just as friendly and likely to be more intelligent. We sent Ian to test this theory out.
I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. I could have sworn the editor said that I was on the big story today. No, the pig story requiring investigation is the claim they're as smart and affectionate as dogs. At this petting farm, the evidence was anecdotal.
Pigs are very affectionate, especially Alice. She's actually really, really affectionate. She likes a good scratch, especially here. And if you actually scratch them hard enough, sometimes they will roll over for you. You can teach them to sit, pick up their paw, just the same as dogs. They're quick learners as well. They love toys, they love enrichment, anything that stimulates their mind they really enjoy. Very social as well, so they talk to the other pigs, talk to the public that walk past.
You say talk to them?
Yeah, of course. So they make lots of different noises, pigs.
Are you a good conversationalist? But the real research was done in Hungary and compared how pigs and dogs reacted when they were given food in a container. The pigs were quicker to figure out how to open it, and when it was impossible, pigs kept trying, while dogs turned to their owners for help.
Good pig.
Canine porcine rivalry has been explored before, though the evidence here isn't entirely reliable.
I can tell you how grateful I am.
Cinematic special effects may have been required for Babe, the talking pig, to come out on top. Right. Back in the real world, we tested retrieval skills. Pippa, fetch the stick. Go on. Fetch. There. No, over there. There. Okay, so not the quickest. Pigs as pets was a celebrity fad for a while. Tom Daley, Miley Cyrus, among those welcoming the pitter-patter of tiny trotters.
They're extremely easy to potty train.
Kirsten Pisani from New Hampshire says her pigs are house-trained.
We had a litter box instead of having her go outside because she was afraid to go outside. And so she started using the litter box on the second day that we had her.
Even micro pigs get very, very large and they stink, and some people say you can toilet train them, but I've yet to see one that's any good at it.
So all in all, if someone tells you a pig's a better pet than a dog, they may be telling porkies. Ian Woods, News at 10.
Porkies it is, and that's it from us. Good night.
It's a cold and wet outlook with some heavy downpours throughout the day. Heinz Big Soup sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello again, hope you're all keeping well. So once again, a real range in temperatures as we edge overnight. Below freezing across many southern areas, so there is some frost and some freezing fog here. Elsewhere, further north, with all of that cloud around tonight, much milder air, lows there, generally between 6 and 9 degrees. So tomorrow morning across the south, we'll get off to a cold start to the day, perhaps some freezing fog out there first thing. But you can see we've got this system across Northern Ireland and into Scotland, gradually sinking its way south, as bringing some cloud and some outbreaks of rain, and eventually it's going to push all of that fog out of the way too. Now behind this system we'll see brighter skies developing in the north with a few showers in places, and temperatures there generally between 7 and 10 degrees. And eventually we'll lose this front, and behind it as we get to Thursday, many of us are looking at some dry conditions, plenty of sunshine across the UK, and our temperatures are around average for the time of year. Bye bye.
Heinz Big Soup sponsors ITV National Weather.